So, I don't even know where to begin, but there's something I want to tell you guys, and I guess Reddit is the best place to do so. Hope I'll be able to finish the story before my phone dies. Anyways, a little something about me. I'm 34, married, 2 kids. We live in upstate New York, not like Manhattan rich or anything, more like Target runs, Costco memberships, and Disney Plus kind of life. And I love that. My husband, Nate, is the love of my life. We met in college, SUNY Albany. I was working part-time at a campus coffee shop, and he came in one morning half asleep and ordered the most ridiculous drink ever, like a triple shot, oat milk, cinnamon, and vanilla. I remember thinking, who the hell is this man-child ordering dessert at 8 a.m.? But he was sweet, nerdy, kind of awkward, and smart in this way that didn't try to make you feel dumb. We clicked. And I guess it didn't hurt that he was obscenely hot in a disheveled way. We've been together ever since. Now here's the thing about Nate. He comes from money. Like, Hampton summer house, Rolex for your 18th birthday. Don't worry, dad will pay for law school kind of money, you know. I didn't fully understand it at first because he never flaunted it. He was humble, but I saw glimpses when I visited his family home for the first time. The house had a library. Not like a bookshelf, a freaking library. With those ladders you slide along the wall, like in Beauty and the Beast. And his mom, Elaine, all silk scarves and, oh, this wine is a bit pedestrian. She smiled and said, oh, it's just something to keep my mind sharp, darling. Like having a full literary archive in your home was normal. But it was his dad, Charles, who always made me feel small. Charles is the kind of man who can compliment you and insult you at the same time. Like once, I wore this green dress to their Christmas Eve dinner. I'd saved up for it. It was from this cute boutique, and I felt so good in it. And he said, wow, how festive. Very spirited. Elaine, doesn't it remind you of that girl from your bridge club who used to overdress? Always laced with judgment. But in this polite, classy, icy tone that made you feel like calling it out would somehow make you the rude one. I spent years just brushing it off, telling myself it's not worth the fight. Nate always defended me, and he hated when I tried to distance myself from family stuff. They're just old school, he would say. But this past summer, everything blew up. It started with a phone call. We were in the kitchen, the kids were half watching Encanto in the background, and I was cleaning up dinner. When Nate came in looking absolutely weird, kind of quiet. He had his phone in his hand, just staring at it. What's up? I asked, drying my hands. He looked at me, half apologetic, half frustrated. So, Dad called. About the family trip this year. Now, every year, his family does this huge week-long vacation. Usually somewhere absurdly fancy. One year it was Bora Bora, another year they rented this ridiculous estate in Tuscany. I used to go, even though I felt like an imposter every time. Their vacations weren't relaxing, they were performances. Everyone was perfectly dressed at breakfast. There were itineraries. Like, who the hell plans out casual beach walks at 7:30 a.m.? I had to pack like I was going to Fashion Week, and even then Elaine would look at my sandals and go, oh, that's one way to stay comfortable. Anyway, so when Nate looked at me with that weird, conflicted face, I already knew something was off. What did your dad say? I asked slowly. And he sighed. He said, maybe it would be better if you stayed back this year. Silence. I just stared at him. He said it might be awkward with some of the other guests. Other guests? Apparently they're inviting some friends from the board, like big names, his law firm people, some senator's wife or something. I don't even know. I felt my stomach twist. Nate, what exactly did he say? And that's when he dropped it. He said, you might not fit the aesthetic. That it could be embarrassing if someone like you didn't understand certain etiquette. I swear to God, I stopped breathing for a second. Someone like me. Not the lawyer's wife. Not the yacht club friends. Me. It was like he'd finally said the thing he'd been dancing around for 10 years. I wasn't good enough. Not for their country clubs. Not for their social media perfect vacations. Not for their so-called elite circle. Turns out I'm not classy enough. Nate tried to soften it. He didn't mean it like that, babe. No, stop it. He did mean it like that. Don't sugarcoat it. And I walked straight past him, up the stairs into our bedroom, locked the door, and just sat on the floor like someone had slapped me. Because I knew, deep down I knew, this wasn't just about a vacation. This was about years pretending I didn't see the way Elaine would clutch her pearls when I said I'd shopped at Old Navy, or acting like I didn't hear Charles mutter, quaint, when I brought deviled eggs to their 4th of July brunch. I had swallowed all of it. For Nate, for the kids, for this idea of family. But now they were telling me to stay home? Like I was the help or something. No, absolutely not. I picked up my phone and texted my sister. I said, hey girl, are you still down for that beach trip you mentioned? Because, you know what? If I wasn't welcome on their trip, I'd make my own, one where I wasn't judged for not knowing which fork to use for the freaking lobster salad. And that was the beginning. I didn't sleep that night, I just laid there with my mind racing, trying not to cry so loud that I'd wake the kids. Nate came in at some point, sat on the edge of the bed and said something like, can we talk? But I couldn't. At least, not yet. The next morning, I got up before everyone, made coffee, and sat in the kitchen scrolling through Airbnb listings. My sister, Liv, had mentioned doing a family trip with her 2 boys. Somewhere fun, simple, kid-friendly, you know. We were thinking Myrtle Beach or maybe the Outer Banks. She said, just you and I, the kids, sunscreen, and too much junk food, and that sounded like heaven right now. I found this cute little house right off the coast, not fancy, but warm and colorful and full of charm. The kind of place where you can walk barefoot without worrying about scuffing the floors. I texted her the link with the words, "Let's book it." I'm in. By the time Nate came downstairs, rubbing his eyes and looking all "let's pretend things are fine," I already had it halfway paid for. He sat across from me at the kitchen island and sighed. "I talked to Dad again last night," he said slowly. "Why?" I asked without even looking up. So, he could double down on the insult? Nate flinched, but I didn't care. Not this time. He needed to feel how deep this cut went. He said it was just a misunderstanding. I slammed my coffee mug down. "Nate, do you honestly believe that?" He didn't say anything. I pushed the laptop toward him, showing the booking confirmation. "This is where the kids and I are going instead. With Liv and the boys. It's paid for. It's done." He looked surprised. "You're really not coming?" I just stared at him. "Don't you think that's kind of dramatic?" He goes. I was like, "You know what's dramatic? Telling your daughter-in-law she's not good enough to be seen in public with your country club friends. Inviting your son and your grandchildren to a luxurious vacation while treating their mother like some embarrassing tag-along who might spill juice on the antique rugs. I'm not doing this anymore, Nate. I've sucked it up for 10 years. I've smiled through your father's backhanded comments. I've listened to your mother act like buying wine at Costco is low class. I've played along, but I'm done for now." He looked like he wanted to argue. Like he wanted to say something that would make it better, but instead, he just ran his hand down his face and said, "Can I at least talk to them first? Try to fix it?" And I just said, "You can do whatever you want, but I'm not going this time." The week that followed was a mess of tension and avoidance. Nate was quiet, distant, probably torn between trying to smooth things over with his parents and not wanting to make it worse with me. I didn't push. I was too busy making packing lists, printing out directions, grabbing sunscreen and floaties, and those little juice boxes the kids like. But the truth was, I wasn't just prepping for vacation. I was prepping for distance. Emotional, mental, and maybe even permanent distance. 3 days before they were supposed to leave for their luxury trip, some absurd resort on the Amalfi Coast this time, I got a call from Elaine, so I answered. "Hello." There was a pause, and then her syrupy voice came through. "Darling, I wanted to call before the trip. To, smooth things over." She continued, "I think there's been a bit of, miscommunication. Charles didn't mean to offend. He simply thought the environment might be a little outside your comfort zone." My comfort zone? That's how they were spinning this? "So, you mean the environment where I'm treated like a +1 to my own family? That environment?" She chuckled lightly. "There's no need to take it personally." "But I do," I said, "because it is personal." He made it personal when he called me an embarrassment. There was silence on her end, and then she sighed like she was the victim in all this. "Well, I hope you know that we still love the children dearly, and we hope Nate decides to come." "You can't love my kids and treat their mother like dirt," I said coldly. "That's not how this works. If I'm not welcome, they're not going either." And I hung up. I knew the line had been drawn. That night I told Nate about the call, and he said, "You know how they are, they don't change." And I said, "Then maybe we the ones that have to." He looked at me, eyes wide. "What does that mean?" "It means I'm done pretending. It means if you want to keep letting them treat me like I don't belong, you can go. But the kids and I, we're not playing this game anymore." He was looking like someone had yanked the rug out from under him. Well, maybe I had, but I wasn't going to apologize for it. So when I say the drive to Myrtle Beach was the most peaceful 6 hours I'd had in years, I mean it. No luxury airport lounges, no packing designer sandals I couldn't afford, no small talk with people who looked at me like I was tagging along on my own family's trip. It was just me, the kids, and a giant bag of gas station snacks. My daughter, Ava, was in the backseat playing DJ on her iPad, and my son Jonah was already talking Liv's ear off on the group call about some boogie boards and sandcastles. The moment we pulled into the little beach house, I felt something loosen in my chest. Like, the house wasn't elegant, or chic, or whatever label Elaine would have slapped on it with a passive-aggressive smile, but it was just perfect. Faded teal shutters, seashell wind chimes, a creaky screen door that slammed just right, like the ones from my own childhood. Liv came barreling down the steps barefoot, holding a half-melted popsicle and yelling, "Sand time," before hugging me so tight my sunglasses slid into my hair. We were barely unpacked before the kids were sprinting toward the beach, their flip-flops flying in every direction. And I just kicked off my shoes, rolled up my jeans, and followed the squeals of laughter into the sand. It felt like reclaiming something. Like waking up from a long, exhausting dream where you're constantly second-guessing everything you say and do. And now, I was just me. Not Nate's wife, not Charles and Elaine's disappointing in-law, just a woman and a mom, toes in the sand, hair in a messy bun, laughing like she didn't have an inbox full of guilt trips and fake apologies. That night, after the kids passed out in their bunk beds smelling like sunscreen and marshmallows, Liv and I sat out on the porch with a bottle of cheap wine and a Bluetooth speaker quietly playing some indie band she loved. I told her everything, like everything from the beginning, all the little things I let slide because I wanted to keep the peace. The way Elaine always made suggestions about my clothes, how Charles would brag about Nate's ex, Tiffany, who went to Cornell and once interned at a senator's office, as if I didn't get a full ride to a state school and bust my butt literally every single day since. Liv listened. She always does. But then she set her glass down, looked me straight in the face, and said something I didn't expect. "You've been shrinking yourself for years, see," she said. You've been folding yourself up so small to fit into their picture and their life and their version of what a family's supposed to look like, but you're done now and you feel it, don't you? And I did. God, I did. We talked until midnight. About everything. About how hard marriage can get when one partner doesn't know how to draw boundaries. About how love isn't always enough when respect keeps getting chipped away. About how sometimes the strongest thing you can do for your kids is show them that no one, not even family, gets to treat you like you don't matter. And the next day, I woke up lighter. We made pancakes with too many chocolate chips. We played card games and went on walks and let the kids bury us in sand up to our necks. I let Ava braid my hair with tiny seashells even though it looked ridiculous. I taught Jonah how to boogie board. And when I saw myself in the reflection of the sliding glass door that night, I looked happy. Meanwhile, Nate had been calling. A lot. I didn't ignore him, I just didn't answer right away. I needed space because, for once, I was in control of the silence. He finally texted on the third day. Can we talk? I'm sorry, I didn't go with them. I just stared at the screen like, he didn't go? I showed Liv the message, and she raised an eyebrow. What do you think that means? I didn't know, but it stirred something in me. I wasn't ready to have that conversation yet. Not from a beach chair with a drink in my hand, but it was something. Maybe the beginning of him waking up. Or maybe just guilt. Either way, I wasn't rushing back to figure it out. Later that afternoon, the kids and I made a seashell mobile together, hanging it from a stick they found near the dunes. Every time the wind blew, it made this soft, clinking sound that reminded me of wind chimes outside my grandma's house when I was little. That night, Jonah climbed into my lap while we watched a movie and said, "This is the best trip ever, Mommy." And I felt it. That quiet assurance that no matter what happened next with Nate, or his parents, or our marriage, this was the kind of life I wanted to build. One where I didn't have to ask for permission to belong. Coming back home after the beach trip felt like walking back into a house that didn't quite feel like mine anymore. Not physically. Everything was where I left it. The same faint smell of lemon cleaner, the same laundry basket that never seemed to empty, but emotionally, something had shifted. Like I had changed my shape on that beach, and now nothing in this house quite fit the way it used to. Nate was sitting on the couch when we got home. Not pacing, just sitting. The kids ran straight past him with their souvenirs, a Ziploc bag full of shells and a half-broken boogie board, yelling about waves and sandcastles. He smiled at them, but his eyes kept flicking back to me. And when they finally disappeared into their rooms, it was just the two of us. "I didn't go," he said. He rubbed the back of his neck like he always does when he's nervous. "I couldn't. After you left, it just didn't feel right. Look, I know what they said was messed up. And I should have said something in the moment, but I didn't want to make it worse." Make it worse? Nate, they told me I wasn't good enough to go on a family trip with my own husband and kids. They called me embarrassing. What part of that exactly was supposed to get worse? He opened his mouth and closed it again. I didn't think they'd actually say that stuff out loud. I stared at him. They've always said that stuff, Nate. Maybe not with those exact words, but it's been there. In every look Elaine gives me when I show up in jeans, in every story your dad tells about your ex, in every suggestion they've made about where we live, how we raise our kids, how I dress, how I talk. You just didn't want to see it. And you didn't defend me. Not even once. "I was wrong," he said, barely above a whisper. And then he said something I didn't expect. "I told my dad we're not doing family trips with them anymore, at least not like that. I told him he crossed a line and that he owes you an apology." He said he didn't mean it that way, that it was just a misunderstanding. But I told him I don't care what he meant. I care what he said. And I told him that if he can't respect you, he doesn't get to see us. And that surprised me, to say the least. "I'm sorry, Z," he said. "I should have had your back, and I'm trying to, honestly. I just don't know if it's too late." He reached for my hand. I didn't pull away, but I didn't grip back either. "I want to do better," he said. "I don't want our kids growing up thinking this is normal and that this kind of judgment is okay. I want them to see us choosing each other." "I need time," I said finally. "Take whatever you need," he replied. So that's what I did. I stayed in the house, but I made it clear that things were different now. I slept in the guest room for a while. I told the kids I needed more time to think, and they, bless their sweet little hearts, just nodded and hugged me and went back to playing Mario Kart like nothing was wrong. Nate backed off. He didn't push. He made dinner some nights, picked up extra chores, took the kids to the park so I could journal or cry or just breathe, and slowly, I started to feel like there was something here worth all these salvaging. But only if I wasn't the only one doing the work this time. I didn't think Charles, Nate's dad, would actually try to apologize. But 2 weeks after our return from the beach, Nate told me over breakfast, in this low, uncertain tone, "My dad wants to come by. He said he wants to clear the air." I paused mid-spread with my butter knife hovering over toast. Clear the air? Or gaslight me into thinking I overreacted? Nate didn't say anything, just looked down at his coffee. I sighed. I wasn't ready to see Charles. But something in me, some primal instinct to finish this fight properly, told me to let it happen. I wanted him to look me in the eye and say what he really thought. I wanted to hear it, not just feel it in every awkward silence or backhanded comment. I wanted the truth, even if it was ugly. So I said, "Fine. But you don't leave me alone with him. And if he starts his usual crap, I'm not staying quiet this time." He nodded, and the way he said okay made it clear he was as nervous as I was. That Saturday afternoon, Charles walked in like he owned the place, like always. wearing his signature navy sport coat, crisp white button-down, loafers that probably cost more than our washer and dryer combined. He looked around like the house offended him. I swear to God. He wrinkled his nose at our IKEA bookshelf. He sat down across from me and Nate at the kitchen table. I noticed how he didn't bother to wait for me to offer a drink. Not even a polite, "How are you?" Just went straight into it. "I heard what you said," he began, fingers laced over his knee, voice calm but sharp. "And I understand you're upset." I raised an eyebrow. That's one word for it. He forced a chuckle, like we were sharing a joke. "Look, Zadie, I think there's been a lot of misunderstanding. We never meant to hurt your feelings. Elaine, and I just felt that maybe the beach house wasn't the right setting." My jaw tensed. Because I'm not classy enough, right? Because I don't wear vineyard vines or order wine with French names I can't pronounce. He held up his hands like I was being unreasonable. "That's not what I said." "But that is what you meant," I snapped. "You said it would be awkward, embarrassing, that I didn't fit in with your little elite circle. You judged me for being myself." He sighed, as if I was the exhausting one. "You have to understand there's a certain image that comes with the kind of gatherings we attend. And Elaine just felt that you might not feel comfortable." That was the moment. Right there. I saw everything I needed to see. He wasn't sorry. Not really. He didn't think he did anything wrong. He thought I was the problem. A blot on his perfectly manicured image of upper-class family life. A stray he never approved of. I leaned forward and said, "You've never respected me. From the second Nate brought me home. I wasn't born into money. I didn't go to an Ivy League school. I don't play tennis at the club or drink dirty martinis. So you decided I was less." He opened his mouth, but I cut him off. "And you know what? I'm done begging for your approval. I don't need it. My kids don't need it. I will not let them grow up thinking they have to twist themselves into knots to be loved." Nate reached over and grabbed my hand. For once, he didn't flinch. He didn't ask me to dial it back, he just held on. Then I stood up. "You don't get to treat me like garbage and then play the peacemaker. If you can't see the problem then, I'm sorry, but you are the problem." Charles stood too, bristling. "I think we've gotten off track." "No," I said. "You just don't like that I'm not afraid of you anymore." The room went still, like all the air had been sucked out of it. Charles adjusted his cufflinks, looked Nate in the eye and said, "This is the kind of attitude you're okay with your children witnessing?" And Nate, bless him, looked his father square in the face and said, "Yes, because for once, they're seeing their mom stand up for herself." Charles didn't slam the door or yell. He just walked out with this stiff spine, this wounded pride, like the world had finally dared to tell him no. After the door shut, I sat back down and Nate sat beside me, quiet for a moment. Then he whispered, "I should have said that a long time ago." I looked at him, unsure. "Do you mean it?" He nodded. "Yeah, I do." And for the first time in a long while, I believed him. Like, truly believed him. That night, I sat in bed and wrote in my journal, something I hadn't done in months. I wrote. He heard me. He finally did. I wasn't sure where that would lead me, but for the first time, I felt like I had the power again. After Charles walked out of our house that day, I thought, maybe now they'll finally leave me alone. Maybe that was the last gasp of their snobby judgment, the final chess move from their side before this whole fake family charade collapsed for good. Well, I was wrong. Because apparently, when one family member dares to hold a boundary, it sends the whole toxic ecosystem into panic mode. It started with Elaine. 3 days after the conversation with Charles, I got a message request on Facebook from her. We weren't friends on there for a reason, but curiosity got the better of me and I clicked it. The message was long. And it was one of the most performative, manipulative things I've ever read in my life. It started out sweet, that faux syrupy tone she always used when she wanted something. "Zadie, I'm truly heartbroken over what's happened. I always considered you a part of our family, even if we didn't always see eye to eye." Then it took a sharp left turn. "But I do think it's important to acknowledge that your reaction was disproportionate. No one meant to hurt you. We were simply trying to curate an environment that felt natural for everyone. That isn't elitist. That's just etiquette. I hope this little episode doesn't cause irreparable harm. The children adore their grandparents, and it would be such a shame for them to grow up without that influence. Don't let personal feelings interfere with family unity." I didn't respond. I just showed Nate the message and asked, "Is this what you grew up thinking was normal?" He read it in silence, lips tight. Then he said, "It's exactly how she used to talk to my sister when she didn't wear the right clothes to church. Like she was constantly a disappointment, but wrapped in a bow of fake concern." That's when I realized something else. Elaine had always been this way. She just got more subtle with age. So guess what? I blocked her. That same night, I sat down with Nate and said, "I want to go no contact. I'm done letting them push us around and pretend it's love." He looked at me for a long time, and then he asked, "What about the kids?" And I was ready for that question because it had been chewing at me too. Like, would they miss their grandparents? Would they resent me someday in the future? But then I thought about all the little moments, all the things our kids had already absorbed. How Emma asked me once if we were poor because we didn't have a beach house. How Jamie told me Grandma said some people just weren't made for fancy things. How both of them got suddenly quiet around Charles. That shrinking kind of quiet that doesn't come from shyness, but from fear. So I told Nate, they'll miss the idea of grandparents more than the reality. What they need is to grow up in a home where love doesn't come with conditions. We didn't make a dramatic announcement. We just disappeared. We stopped attending family events, removed them from the kids' school contact lists, and didn't invite them to birthdays. And the kids actually flourished. Emma started drawing these colorful, ridiculous vacation houses on paper, and when I asked where she got the idea, she said, "I want to build one for us, with jelly bean walls and a slide." Going no contact sounds like a final scene, like a door slamming shut with echoing dramatic music behind it, and it actually feel that way. Some days I would wake up at 2 a.m. with this weird knot in my chest, wondering, what if I'm the bad guy? Nate struggled more than I did, I think, because even though he saw the truth now, those were still his parents. He had years of internal wiring that told him you respect your parents no matter what, so that whole honor thy father and mother thing was practically tattooed into his brain. Sometimes he would get quiet and scroll through old photos, family trips from when he was a kid, birthday dinners where everyone looked happy in pictures, even if he remembered how tense they actually were. One night he turned to me and said, "You know, it's weird. I used to look at those old Christmas mornings and think, wow, what a magical childhood I had. But now I remember how Grandpa would get drunk and yell at my mom for burning the rolls. Or how Elaine would pull me aside and tell me not to eat too much dessert because I was getting husky. I thought that was normal. And I told him what I wish someone had told me when I first started waking up to my own dysfunctional upbringing. Just because you were used to it doesn't mean it was okay." We started building new traditions with the kids. We did a backyard campout with flashlights and the worst told ghost stories you've ever heard. We went to a lake an hour from our house and rented this little rickety cabin that smelled like pine and damp wood, and it was perfect. No dress codes, no judgment, no commentary about the price of the wine or the brand of flip-flops I was wearing. The kids stopped asking about Charles and Elaine after a while. I think they picked up on the fact that we were calmer and happier because kids are sponges. They absorb our tension even when we try to hide it, and when that tension disappeared, so did the questions. But of course, it wasn't all peace and rainbows. The flying monkeys came out of the woodwork. Cousins, an aunt who hadn't texted us in 3 years, suddenly decided to check in. One of Nate's cousins even had the nerve to message him saying, "It's really sad what Zadie's done to the family. We miss you, but we can't support division." Well, choosing peace over generational dysfunction is apparently some kind of crime. About 6 months after the beach house incident, Charles tried to call Nate, just a missed call on a random Tuesday afternoon. Nate saw the caller ID, stared at it for a full minute, then flipped the phone over and slid it across the table. "I don't have anything to say to him," he muttered. He made it clear who he is. And we started living. Like, really living. We stopped trying to prove we were good enough. We stopped overthinking every social interaction or trying to keep up with this invisible, ever-moving bar of what was appropriate or respectable. And eventually, I even stopped waiting for the apology that was never coming. Because the truth is, people like Charles don't apologize, so I made peace with never hearing "I'm sorry." It's been over a year since the beach house incident. A lot can happen in a year, right? So, our life now, it's not flashy, it's not whatever Charles and Elaine think is classy or proper, but it's ours. Like, it's full of laughter and late-night dance parties in the kitchen. It's grocery store trips in pajamas, weekend movie marathons, sticky pancakes on Sunday mornings, and all that. I've learned a lot this past year. I've learned that blood doesn't entitle someone to access you, that you can love someone from afar and still protect yourself. That sometimes the most loving thing you can do for your children is to say no more to people who hurt you, even if those people share their DNA. I've also learned that boundaries are only uncomfortable to people who benefited from you having none. And when you set one, the people who get mad, that mean they were never on your side to begin with. But look, I didn't set out to become the villain in Charles and Elaine's country club soap opera. I didn't wake up one day and think, you know what would be fun? Blowing up our family dynamic. But when someone looks you in the face and tells you stuff like, "You're not good enough for us," and your own husband's father basically implies that your presence is embarrassing, that's not a misunderstanding, rather a choice. And Nate, he's been on his own journey too. He's in therapy now, something he never thought he'd do, but says it has been life-changing. He's unpacking all that old guilt, all that generational pressure, all the ways he was taught to silence his instincts in favor of family respectability. He told me once, "I used to think my job was to keep the peace, but I realized peacekeeping isn't the same as peacemaking. One just keeps the noise down, and the other actually heals." We built something new, something true and real. And if there's one thing I want my kids to carry with them into the world, it's that love doesn't come for money. That respect isn't earned by acting like someone else's puppet. That real family sees you, not as a problem to fix or a project to polish, but as a person to cherish.